pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No. There are none.
All right. And a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Talley and Mr. George. Mr. Roberts, would you please call roll?
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mrs. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. We're going to move right into presentations. And we have a district presentation, I believe Mr. Whitlatch.
No, I can start here, it's fine. All right, evening. Here tonight just to give a review of the report card for our district. I have communicated with you through several of my board reports the progress we've had from, what was that, July to an August timeframe, and now it's been released to the public. So on my board report, I put in there what our overall rating was for a district, what each building received, and all the categories. So what I'm going to review on the screen tonight, this is from the public site on the on ODE. On ODE, and anybody in this room or our community can go out and view this information. So as a district overall, or the state of Ohio, I should say, start a couple years ago, we used to be on the A through F rating, and now they have switched to the STAR system. So the stars kind of mirror exactly what we had before, but they did change how it's calculated from time to time. Our overall rating is a 4 as a district, which exceeds state standards. If we had a 5, it'd say significantly exceeds state standards, and a 3 is meeting state standards. As below the overall rating, it's broken down into the achievement category, in which as a district we received a 3. Every other building received a 3 as well, except for Winchester Trail received a 4. And the way achievement is calculated is we have our performance index, which is an 86.8. And if I scroll on down here, the state gives a weighted formula for each area where our students' performance falls as a district. So you have from untested, so you can say, well, if we don't test kids, that doesn't hurt us. Well, if that 0.5% untested would have taken the exam, we may have gained a few points somewhere else in there. So the untested does have, we try to get 100% of our kids tested all the time, but there are situations where they cannot come into the building, and even within the 15-day window. And sometimes we put a medical waiver in, but not always are those approved by the state of Ohio. You may ask yourself what Advanced Plus is. Advanced Plus is when we have an accelerated student, let's say a 7th grade student that took Algebra 1, and they scored an advanced on that test. That then becomes an Advanced Plus rating for our student and for our district. So 1% of our students, and we don't have a ton of them, but the ones that we do have, we did get a little bonus there of 1.3 points for that. The calculation here, so we had 86.8 was our performance index of a possible 108.8. Many years ago, that used to be capped at 120. But the state of Ohio, when we went to the STAR system, they modified that because no one ever got a perfect score. That was impossible. It never happened. So the state of Ohio then changed it to the top 2%. That 108.8 is the top 2% of all districts in the state of Ohio, their average performance index. So that's how they compare this now. We were 0.2 away. If we were at 80, we would be a 4-star in the achievement category. So we just missed it by 0.2. And I just want to bring up, I know we have the CW Promise out there. We have one item in the CW Promise that relates to the school report card, and that is we want our overall performance index to improve by 2 points for next school year. On my board report, if you look through there, I have the district, I have every building's performance index, and I have the year from 2019. Then you don't have a 2020, because then it goes from 21, 22, and 23. 2019 was the performance index for pre-COVID. So you see the newspaper articles, you see different people talk about what's the impact of the pandemic, how close are we getting to where we were pre-pandemic times. This just shows you where we are throughout. Did we hit our overall 2 points as a district? If I round, I can say we did. We got a 1.64 gain. I've been meeting with every tested subject. I have the high school yet to do, which will be over the next 2 weeks. But I break down what every tested subject's PI was in 2019, and then what they've done since COVID. And it's quite a significant gain, and it's also nice to share, and I'll just met with the ELA group at the middle school. Every ELA subject, 6, 7, and 8, is actually achieving above pre-COVID times on their performance index. So that's nice to see. So that's just the achievement piece. Moving on, we have progress. Progress, we were a 4-star district. Progress is the value add that our students make a year's worth of growth. We have, and this is the average of all, we did very well in the district. We were 4s all the way through, and Winchester Trail was a 3, and they met. So if I click on the more data, they just have this broken down by like a color code right now. Basically, that dark gray represents we're above, significantly above, and we had, 5 or 11 different 11 different tested areas that were above, significantly above. We had 2 subjects that were slightly above, and then we had 6 that met. So a total of, 19 different subjects were meeting or above. We do have some that fell just slightly below, and they are in the yellows and the red. Like I said, I haven't met with high school yet, but I've met with all the 4 through 8 areas. This is a nice palette, I guess, color palette to have. You know, of course, you want to see everything at least, be green or higher, but this is just the progress that we're making, and we're very pleased with this. Unfortunately, there's another data site that will provide us more information of what was the driver behind all this, but right now, this is all we have to go by. But we're very proud of the progress results. Next comes gap closing. Gap closing also deals with performance index as well, and it's broken down into many categories. We have our English language arts and our math. Science does not play a role in this. It's just ELA and math. What you're looking at on the screens now is the red dots are what the state of Ohio puts as goals for all districts in Ohio. The percentage, the numbers out beyond that is what Canal Winchester did. So achievement-wise, in ELA, we went 9 for 9 with our groups, and in mathematics, we went 9 for 9 in our groups across the district. So we hit every target that was expected, that was put up forth by the state. If I scroll on down, this is value add again. It comes in again, and you will get more credit if your subgroup achieved by over 2 points, which is significant progress. In language arts, if I hover over that blue, that was all students, and the economically disadvantaged students is next here in the yellow. It says 2.0, but that's a lie. It's a 1.97. We did not get credit for that. So that's just close. It's close, but it didn't work. So we get 1 extra point here out of 9, and then in math, you can see we had, 5 above. What's a positive here? In value add speak, the 0 is the perfect growth line. We have some that are below, but we're not significantly below. So all of our groups made, basically right around a year's worth of progress. Some did more. And what's unique about this, we could have students that their scores are in multiple categories. They're going to be in all students. They could be on economically disadvantaged. They could be a Hispanic student, and they could be an EL student. So they're going to count 4 times in this. Scrolling on down, we have our graduation rates. Once again, we have our target set by the state of Ohio and what each group did. And the English learners. This is based on their own OELPA exam that sometimes you read in my report. This is they have a test over 4 domains of reading, listening, speaking, and writing. And the target for the state was 46 and change, and we had a 57 as our total, or 55.7 as our total. So we met that one as well. And then finally, we have chronic absences across the district. This, you can read there, it's 10 or more. And we met this as a district. There is a gifted piece to this too. If I click the more gifted data, we got credit because our value add, they met expected growth. And when I would meet with our teachers, this is quite a high performance threshold, because if you look down here at the gifted performance index, you see they are given their own separate index of 120.556. So you're thinking, well, why is that above 120 when earlier I said maybe 120 was the max? That's taking into account the advanced plus kids. So you will go above. Our performance index was 116.090, gave us a 96.3. You see there it says not met. We needed a 96.5. And as the summer went on, we went above, we went below, we went above, we went below, we finished below. I'm not disappointed by that. Our kids are performing, and when I meet with the teachers, they see that our performance indexing for our gifted students has climbed each of the last 3 years. We're just not getting the credit for that right now on the report card.
You know what that was pre-COVID?
Not for the gifted standalone, I do not. I'd have to go dig that up.
I didn't know if those kids have bounced back or.
I have, for the middle school, I just met with today, the geometry kids from the middle school are exceeding their pre-COVID level. Algebra is right there close. And then I will say in mathematics, ELA, we're much closer to pre-COVID than we are in mathematics. That's the gap that COVID still shows for us and around the country.
I was gonna say, is that us specific, or you think that's Central Ohio?
It's Central Ohio. I mean, I just know from what
Across the
I've
board.
read, yes, from what I've read, the research and different things, our ELA is much closer to, like I said, 6th, 7th, 8th grade is already exceeding above. But mathematics is the struggle right now for not only us, but for others. The next one here, 4-star in graduation. You can see we have a formula here where they take a 4-year and a 5-year piece. I just want to point this out to you. In the 4-year graduation rate, only 67% of our kids were here as freshmen through senior year consistently. And in our 5-year graduation rate, it was 74.8. That makes sense, that's a little higher, because if you're here for 4, you probably were here for 5. But last year's cohort, only 67% of our kids were here freshmen through senior year. So
How long has that been around at that average?
I think that average is low because of COVID. We're in the COVID time frame for the high school there and middle school. So that would be some move-ins. And if I back this up, my math would be right. We had the koala piece going on too, where some kids chose other options other than our koala. I will say about our mobility, we seem to gain in every grade level from 1 class to 2 classes of new students that weren't here the year before. Now, that doesn't mean we're growing, 25 to 40 kids a year. That means we've lost, say, 30-some, and 40 have replaced them in that grade level. I believe when we looked at 3rd grade, we had 29 or 32 that came in new this year from 2nd to 3rd that were brand new to the district. So that is a consistent number in all grade levels. Going back now to early literacy. As a district, we came in at a 3-star. And early literacy is a component that there are districts that will claim that all kids are put on a RIMP in all grade levels, in K through 3. That is not our practice. We only put kids on a RIMP that are below the threshold on our diagnostic, which would be MAP. Can that hurt us? Yes, but at the same time, that's the practice that we have. If we as a district started putting everybody on a RIMP, we would basically have a 0 next year because no one from the year before could get off.
When we say RIMP, you're talking about
Reading and, yes. Yeah, reading improvement monitoring plan. So the early literacy component is based on the third grade reading guarantee. Each year we give a diagnostic in the fall. We have a cut score, and any kid that's below that cut score that would equal proficiency in the future is put on a reading improvement and monitoring plan. From there, the services can be working with a title teacher to being really a tier 1 in the classroom support small group instruction. That's just a piece of this. This right here, what you're looking at, is our overall grade. So proficiency in the third grade was at 74.3. That would get a weight of 40% in this calculation. Promotion to fourth grade is 100%. That's thanks to the law change, because we would have retained 4 students last year. And that gets a weight of 25%. And then you have your improvement of K3 literacy, which is only 29.2, and that gets a weight of 35%. That goes now to a total of 72, and that gave us our 3-star. The 29.2%, you're like, well, what is that? Well, that's basically right around 100 kids or 100 plus kids that we had on a RIMP that no longer was on a RIMP previously. So from fall to fall is how that works. So we had over 100 kids. So if you do that math real quick, and you say, oh my gosh, we had 300 kids? Yes, we did. That's what I can say about that. We had all those kids, but our proficiency in third grade at 74.3, those numbers aren't matching. So that's just the maturity of the kids with their instruction, with their reading skills, all coming through on the third grade test and showing the positive gains there.
I don't want to throw you off of the presentation, but so if early literacy is defined as third grade reading.
Yes.
So how, when I look at the school level reports.
Right.
How does Indian Trail get an early literacy score of 1 if it's a third grade?
Well, it's because the diagnostic given for kindergarten, they will be put on reading and improvement monitoring plans too.
Okay.
So that fall of kindergarten, that group of kids, when they come back in fall first grade, they take the diagnostic. So if we had 100 kids in kindergarten and then 80 in that same 100 that would be identified as a RIMP again, we only get credit for the 20 coming off. So it's all part of the third grade reading guarantee umbrella. That's kind of how I phrase it. And as you click through here, there are different pieces you can pull from this. As it showed with graduation, here's our third grade. Only 73.6% of our third grade students were here kindergarten through third. That should improve with all day, every day kindergarten coming in the future. This is just the fall diagnostics again. This would be from kindergarten of, if I have my numbers right, yep, 2021 to fall of 2022. These are big numbers, but I've gone and looked at some other districts. Do we want to do better? Yes. We're already having discussions about it. Mrs. Cobb and I have met. She's also met with her DLTs at the building, or her BLT at the building. She's having individual meetings, I know, coming up this week, even on mathematics. So it's just being discussed. We did a little run of the numbers. This last year was 29.2. We should be almost 10 percentage points higher than that next year. Unfortunately, that would probably still be a 1. That's just, we have to get, out of the 100 kids, we'd have to get 59% of those to move off the RIMP. That's a big lift.
But it seems like we're closing the gap, all right?
Yes, we are.
We got significantly exceed standards.
Correct.
Closing.
Correct. And look, and this is also, if you look at our overall ratings for our buildings, Indian Trail doesn't get an overall rating, but there are 5 on GAP. We have 4s and 5s all the way through. Winchester Trail, we go from a 4 overall, 3 overall, our high school's a 4.5. So if you think about the maturity of the students, the skills that's being developed year after year, we are making the progress that you want to see when they're at the end of our journey here with us. So it's a nice opportunity to show growth year after year, and that's what we're looking at.
And, excuse me, and
yes.
so these are the results from like the snapshot of the fall diagnostic, because they are taking it winter and spring as well.
Correct. We look, if we would give you the fall to spring information, we would look at totally different. We really wouldn't. There's a lot more gains, and meeting with Mrs. Cobb and her team, they were very frustrated because it doesn't show that fall to spring gain during the school year. It's the fall to fall.
Yeah, because I know
Yes.
typically students perform better, as the year goes on.
That is correct. Yes, that is correct. So that's just,
Yeah, and to
that's the
Bill's,
rules we have.
and to Bill's point, 15% of our first graders were not here on average in kindergarten. 15% of them.
So, but I know I went 500 miles an hour, and if you ask Jasmine sitting over there, Mrs. Smithers, she's heard the presentation for third grade. It's a rush job, but what's great about it, the teachers know me. I'm pretty consistent with my approach. I enjoy meeting with them. Sometimes the data's not what everybody wants to see, but it's also knowing we respond to it and we try to move kids forward next year when we have them. And that's all we can do year after year. No one comes to work saying, nope, can't get this done today. No, we are, rolling up our sleeves and we want to improve. And what I've shared to everybody I've met with so far is we have, from 2021, we have an ELA from our PI and the gap closing, we've improved over 10 points. In mathematics, we've improved on average, all improvements improved over 12 points. Now, we have certain subgroups that are performing better. So like in ELA, our economic disadvantage actually improved 16 plus points. Black African American was 14 plus in ELA. And in mathematics, multi-ethnic was 16.5 points, and economic disadvantage was 16.1. So we have gains all over the place, but it's a positive gain, and that's what I'm pointing out. Don't get frustrated when things don't appear like you want them to, because we are gaining on our results every year. Comments, questions?
With the state passing that we're not going to be able to hold third graders back, that they're moving forward, what is that going to do to that student, do you think, your personal opinion, when that student's moved on and they may not be ready, do we start to lose them at a greater pace as everyone else is moving forward, or are they able to rebound and keep up with their group?
So by the change in the law, those students now remain on a RIMP in fourth grade. So eyes do not go off of them. Effort does not move away from them. And by the law, it states they will remain on a RIMP until they get to grade level. Our job locally is to define what grade level is. Is it a proficient score on the state exam? If I have my way, that answer is no. Because if I'm a high school student, I only need a 684. I don't need a 700. So I'm trying to work with our building leadership. I haven't discussed this with the teachers yet, but I'm just trying to take what our 10th graders did last year on the state exam. Figured out we had 80-some% of those kids get a 684 or higher. Out of that, I've gone back and pulled their math results from when they were here in third grade.
Of course you did.
Well, but then we also have a different type of student now. That was a normal K-3 upbringing, homes, everything. It was all normal. So it came out rather high, which was great to see. But so we need to come up with a plan that is fair to sit down with a parent, sit down with a student and say, if you can perform at this range, say 37th percentile to 41st percentile or whatever, you're going to say, well, that's pretty low. Well, that's what the 684 kind of comes out to be. But if we can get that student performing there regularly, the RIMP can go away. And then does that mean the eyes go off the kid? No, all eyes are on all of our kids, from the teachers to, it's amazing what names I remember from looking at data, so on and so forth. So, but that's the challenge we have now. And if they don't hit that mark in fourth grade, it follows them to fifth grade. It follows them all the way through to their senior year. And that's not what we want for our goal. We want to build the students up to get them the confidence. And we can also put in there, if they can't get 37 to 41 on the MAP exam or what we're using, what if they get a 684 on the fourth grade ELA test? Well, that's going to be a 684 in high school possibly. And that's something I've been sharing with every grade level I've met with. I give them their percentage of what 684 looks like based on their test for their grade level. Because that, to me, is a very attainable mark for all of our students.
Are we in control of that ramp, moving the student on and off that, or is that?
We will be, because
We can.
we have not received anything. I know Craig and I have spoken many times. We've not received anything from the state of what defines grade level. I'm not trying to make it an easy target, but I want it to relate to high school graduation, because that's our goal.
To a Canal target?
Correct, correct. That's our goal. We want it for the high school graduation.
And you said those 4 students that we did, they would stay on their ramp, like, in the summertime, I know we can't necessarily mandate they stay in the summertime for like extra, like,
Right.
extra support, but do we offer that for them, or do we?
That will be, so right now, for our third grade reading guarantee practice, we've not changed a thing. We're still gonna offer MAP as an alternative assessment. We're still gonna offer Terra Nova. The summertime piece, we're still gonna offer. Because, let's say the student, we do all this for the student, and maybe that student in summertime hits a qualifying mark. That RIMP does not follow. It doesn't have that, we just don't have to keep that process rolling for this. And we're gonna celebrate the heck out of that kid's achievement, that they've hit that mark along the way. So we have not changed our practice at all. We still have to report to the state of Ohio how a kid gets advanced to 4th grade. If the kid does not hit the target, there's actually a code for that. And the state knows who those, they claim they don't know who they are, but they can pull them up. So, any other?
That kind of leads to what Monica was saying, is the students are learning at a better rate when they're fully engaged for a longer period of time, which then goes to, what do we do over the summers for students to offer to keep them engaged,
Yeah.
so they don't go away? I mean, they want to go have fun anyway.
Right.
But to keep
Keep
the
progress
continuance, the
going. Right.
progress going.
Right. And our summer program's not a bad time. Our kids seem to enjoy it. It's different because it's school, but it's not school. You know what I mean? Because it's summertime. There's a little more, not a whole lot of freedom, but it just feels different than being in the classroom with 20-some of your peers. And so last year we had a couple students in 3rd grade that did hit the mark on one of our alternative assessments. So, it paid off, and then we're not gonna change that practice.
I know before COVID, we had kind of a more continuing summer program. What were those numbers? Do we know offhand, like how many kids were in that summer program?
From previous or from this last year?
Previous and then last year. I'm not gonna hold you to previous. What about last year? Do you know last year by chance?
Corey, you remember your total? Because we brought in, I think it was right around 30. That may not sound like a lot, but we brought in 30 when only 4 needed to be there if you base it off the practice of the rules. So we brought in kids that had hit the mark that we knew would benefit, and other students. So we do expand that, and then depending on the staffing that we can do, we'll see what we go from there, or where we go from there.
And I understand staffing is an issue with the summer. I mean, the stipends to pay them to come in may not always be there, but I guess if we have enough kids and families that want to get back into that continual program.
And that's something we'll talk about. I know we provide transportation too for our students. so-
Lunches, transportation.
Yes, lunches become interesting because we have to meet a qualifier for that, for our lunches now.
Okay.
Just letting you know. All right, anything else? Took a long time, sorry. All right, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm sure if we want more details, we could certainly make an appointment, come to your office.
Yes, you can, yes.
One clarifying, just from, I can't remember who asked the question about the changes with 3rd grade reading guarantee and moving them on to 4th grade. We still have the ability to make the recommendation that they not move on if we don't believe they're ready. And that's something that we've always been able to have, we've always been able to do. It's just with the 3rd grade reading guarantee, we were required to hold them back to 3rd grade if they didn't meet a certain number. So we still have the ability to have those conversations with parents if we don't believe it's in the best interest of the kid to move them on.
Yeah, and the parent can actually initiate that conversation.
And
School year comes to an end.
I'll say it on the mic since Mr. Wetlatch is no longer on the mic, but the parent can also initiate that.
Thank you, Bill. Next presentation, CWEA. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jasmine Smithers, Winchester Trail Building Rep, third grade teacher. Just a couple of celebrations or announcements to share about our staff. So one from Winchester Trail, Courtney Ford received her master's degree in curriculum and teaching from Bowling Green State University in August, so congratulations to her. And Cassie Dickinson, our librarian at the high school, she will be presenting 2 sessions at the Ohio Educational Library and Media Association Conference in October. This conference is an annual fall conference which provides professional learning and collaboration opportunities for school librarians as they support the instructional needs and personal learning of all students and teachers. Her presentations for this conference will be titled Rethinking Library Organization and In Celebration of Reading Aloud. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be moving on. Kai, no public voice?
Correct, no public voice tonight.
All right. That'll move us into executive reports. And first off is the treasurer's report with Mr. Roberts.
Good evening. I'm gonna throw some more numbers and percentages at you tonight. It's still early, 2 months through the fiscal year, but we do have some indication of how the revenues are gonna kind of shake out. Got our first settlement on the income tax. I'll go to year over year. It's gonna show we're down 291,000 year over year. We had some delinquencies last year, and then we had more estimate on the income tax. Those were higher. The deductions on the checks were actually up 8%, so that causes me to know that this is probably going to continue to rise over year, even though it's first quarter it's down. Now, had our withholdings been down, I would have probably been concerned, but with those being up 8%, those make up a pretty good bulk of the income tax collections. And I kind of expected delinquencies to kind of calm down, so I didn't really forecast too much of that. So we're still looking at a 3 to 5% year-over-year increase on the income taxes. Real estate tax through the first would be actually the second half settlement for tax year 23 was up slightly, 452,000. Believe it or not, that really came down to collection percentage. So we were estimating about 98.5% of collecting all taxes that were billed. That's typically what our percentage is. This year we received 100.5. So delinquencies came in. So the 2% of collections on what was billed really increased this amount. The last 2 years, actually, we've been right at 100%. So our taxpayers are paying the tax bills with no delinquencies. So that's great news for the school districts. Most districts are hovering in that 95 to 98% of actual paid on what was billed from the county auditor. State aid really hasn't kicked in yet. We are going to start seeing an increase once they get the formula built and updated from what legislation approved for the July 1 budget. It is not updated yet. They're still, Ohio Department of Education still working through. It usually takes them until about November to get that updated, to update all of the school districts. It wasn't that much of a change. This time we kept the formula in place, so it should just be little factors within the formula to make the changes. So I'd hope that they'd get this maybe next month or November to start getting the actual revenues that we're going to receive this year.
Do they go back and just give us that in a lump sum to catch up?
Yeah, what they'll do is they'll calculate it and give you what your annual amount's going to be, and then they'll take what they have given you and then spread it out over the remaining payments. And that's going to be both of these lines right here, the 38,000 increase and the 19,000. This unrestricted and restricted are both from the state. Tangible personal property is actually not down 498,000. If you remember, we've had one taxpayer that sometimes pays the full bill on the first settlement. They did that last year, and then this year they split it up again. So year over year, that's going to look about the same, actually be about a 1% slight increase. So that's not actually going to be down $500,000.
So a question on real estate, and I guess this would be what you're hearing from maybe other treasurers. Based on the, thank you, based on the large increase in property taxes that will hit Franklin County, are you guys, treasurers in general, expecting a higher delinquency rate?
We may, yeah, we'll probably bump that down a little bit. But I would expect most people to continue to pay. I mean, Franklin County, I think the average home value is going to increase 45%. That does not mean taxes are going to go up 45%.
Right.
There's reduction factors in place with House Bill 920 that was implemented in 1976, I think.
Yep.
That will help offset those large increases. The good news for us is we've got about 9 mills in bond levies. We have 10 mills in the emergency levy. Both of those will decrease. We will not receive any more money off of those levies. They are fixed income levies. So if your value goes up, those millage rates come down and you do not pay any more money for those two levies. They will pay on the inside millage by law, which is 10 mills. So everybody will be guaranteed to go up at least $10 per thousand on the value increase. It's definitely going to be more than we've seen in the past. For example, I think our forecast, even with going to be record highs for this school district, probably going to see $160 million in property value increase, which is insane. We will see about $800,000 of revenue from that $160 to $180 million, where it's substantial increase year over year, but it's not as much as people think it is because of the reduction factors that take place across all of the tax rates that are implemented in that subdivision or entity location. So, very good question. Any questions on the revenues? Any more questions on the revenue side?
Yeah, with regard to the state revenue, typically we tend to get about $3,200 per pupil. Like we're funded about $3,200 per pupil. Do you expect that to be around the same with the new formula?
Our
higher,
state
or-
percentage is going to continue to decline, and we've got that projected in the 5-year forecast. The reason is when we have the $160 million property tax increase, that says to the state that our people can now afford the education more from a local side. So as our income tax increases, our property values increase, our state share decreases. So that all gets plugged into the formula because they take the last 3 average years on your real estate and your income tax. And so I expect our percentage to keep coming down where the local share will pick up more. Our saving grace, in year 2 of this biennium, we would have probably lost money, but implementing the full day kindergarten really couldn't have come at a more perfect time because we're funded at 50% of our kindergartners. This year we have 208, so we'd be funded for 104 of those. Next year we're estimating 300 kindergartners, so we're going to pick up funding for 200 additional students, which really helps our
Yeah, and that was my
enrollment.
next question. So if our enrollment numbers go up, that could help offset that.
Correct. So Ms. Hunt and I have talked. We're losing about 18% of our enrollment to other places, charter schools, private, homeschooled, open enrolled. So when 18%, about 18%. The 2020 census said we should have close to 4,400 K-12 students. And we're at, what, 36, 26 or somewhere in that range? So we lose about 700 students to charter, private, homeschooled, open enrolled.
So that kindergarten, the hope is it'll recapture those students and hopefully they'll be able to stay with us if they feel like it. And I know we lost some students during the pandemic and they just haven't quite come back to where we were at before necessarily. But
Yeah, for sure. That's why, and I think that's why we did full day, because there, you could see in the numbers that it was a clear need for the community. When you see your kindergarten enrollment 230 last year And then our first grade enrollment is 280. So 50 kids came back to the district. There was 50 kids that did not want to come here in kindergarten that wanted to, had to go somewhere else, and then they returned in first grade. And then we pick up 10 more in second, 10 more in third, 10 more in fourth. So they slowly trickle back is what happens. So hopefully, if we communicate well and we get the message out, we won't lose those kids from the start. We'll be able to get our hands on them. They'll have our kindergarten education and be able to go up through first, second, and third, and hopefully some consistency happens. The state report card grades start changing a little bit as we get our systems in place with those kids. And we've got some big birth rates coming up, so we're expecting probably to be around 300 kindergartners for the next several years. It's going to be a big adjustment for that building, going from 105 to 120 kindergartners to 300 in that building at one time. So.
Because the amount of funding for a homeschool student and a charter school student for the tax amount for the new law, is that the same amount that we get for the student when they come to our district, or is it a sliding scale based on an income tax?
No, it's an amount that legislation set. I think it's what, for a high school student, 76, 7800, and then a K-8 student, I want to say is like 60. I'd have to look. It's over 6,000. So, in comparison, state revenue, I think we receive right around 3,800, give or take. So, a high school student, a voucher is worth double of what we are receiving for that. And the reason is, in the legislation's eyes, they're saying, we're only giving you 3,800, but you have local resources to collect the remaining.
So basically they're saying they give us 3,800, but the other money that they're not giving us, that they are giving charter or homeschool parents, is money that we receive from businesses that pay taxes to the school district, or homeowners that pay taxes to the school district. Is that what they're saying? I'm trying to understand where the other money
I think in a roundabout way, that's what they're trying to say. That's how they're coming up with the $7,600. Yes.
But the parents who are paying who get vouchers are still paying the same amount of property taxes, and that money still goes to the school as
Correct.
income tax, as would whether they're going to school here or not. Is that correct?
Correct.
Portion of that comes back to the school. Whether you go to fire,
So it's a net.
roads.
I mean, they're still paying, like, say, for instance, if their taxes is, if they would pay 3,000 to the school
Exactly.
for taxes, but they got 75, then they're still paying the 3,000 to the school for taxes. It's not like they're not paying
Correct.
taxes to
No,
the school.
they're still being billed for real estate, and they're still liable for income tax collections. Yes. Yep. So, any other questions on the revenue portion? So expenditures, personnel and employment, they're up as expected. Purchase services, we're pretty much break even, and then supplies are down $304,000, mainly due to timing of the textbook adoption. We had a large one, or a decent sized one last year, and we have a very small one this year. And then Chromebook timing also comes into play with supplies. So, but the forecast, we're projecting right now to have revenues exceed expenditures by $6.4 million. We knew that. We moved $14 million last year, which gave us a $10 million deficit spending. So we knew that this was going to get us back to $39 million or so. $4 million in ESSER will all come back to general fund. So if you really wanted to look at this, we would be plus $2.4 million this year if ESSER did not exist, which will come back next year.
Are they gonna put more restrictions on ESSER for you when you transfer it over, or are you gonna have a little bit more flexibility with using those funds? Cause I know now, isn't there like a lot more there's a little less flexibility with the funds, we can use it now.
ESSER will be complete after this year. All
Okay.
funds will be exhausted,
Okay.
and everyone paid from ESSER will move back to general fund.
Okay.
That's federal ESSER, correct?
Yeah, that's
The
the,
state decided what they're gonna do with their ESSER funds?
they're divvying it out slowly at a time. The safety grants, we received 2 of those. Those were from the ARP ESSER funds. So they're doing different things. You'll see periodically the governor will roll out different plans. I think he's had some fire and safety things. He's had the school safety. I think it's initiatives that his office wants to see. So I would expect the school safety to continue. We will continue to apply for those.
Do you know if the state has a time restriction on when they have to expend all of their ESSER funds?
Yeah, I think it's October 1st of next year. I think all ARP ESSER has to be expended.
Okay.
So I'd expect some sort of big ramp up from the state on initiatives here probably in this year. Which they've been giving they've given a big chunk out in the school safety grants. We received 184,000, and I think it was like 32,000. So we've received right around 220,000. The 184 is going towards the security system upgrades, the cameras, and then the 30-some thousand. I think we took that towards the door systems, security door systems. So. Interest rates are still up. We've gotten very aggressive on expiring to taking it out into the 3 to 5 year window. We're trying to stay away from the 1 to 2 year window to really set ourselves up for the future, knowing that interest rates are going to eventually come down from the 5%. So we're trying to guarantee ourselves the 5% for as long as we can. So we're starting to really hit those targets out to 3 to 5 years to make sure investments stay up. You can see it's a big part of our other revenue. So if we can earn money on the money we have, it's a win for the district. So forecast to be coming up in November. We're going to have a work session. We'll really dive deep into the financials. Probably about like Mr. Whitlatch did today, of really knowing kind of where the money is and what our plans are in the future. So, any other questions on the monthly financials? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I'm going to move on to superintendent's report.
All
Ms.
right.
Hunt?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I would like to take a moment to publicly thank the Canal Winchester Labor Day Parade Committee for honoring our staff as grand marshals of the Labor Day Parade. We had just shy of 100 staff members serve as grand marshals, and we had several of our teams and our clubs decorate floats and march in the parade. In addition to leading the parade, we also had one of our teachers, Mr. Sean Cassidy, bring up the rear of the parade as well. So we were definitely out in full force. It was a fun day. Warm, to say the least, but I think everybody heard great feedback and everybody was excited to be a part. Site work at Indian Trail has begun, including a building pad grading and excavation of a temporary dry basin. I have no idea what any of that means, but I do know it's progress. Upcoming work that is scheduled is the storm system installation and the foundation excavation. The work being done now isn't as exciting because we don't get to see the results because most of the work is being done underground. However, it is the foundation that in the next few weeks, we will begin to see the foundation and the walls being set, and we are hopeful by mid-October that you'll start to really see the building take shape. The project, as of now, is currently set to be finished August 5th. So we're still within our timeline to make sure that we're opening. We did have a discussion last week just to make sure. And so the calendar committee is working to talk about getting a calendar set for next school year. We just wanted to make sure that we had those dates in place. And last but certainly not least, we will be sending out our second annual Your Schools, Your Voice survey to our staff, students, families, and community in the next few weeks. We will use the feedback gathered with that survey to reflect on the work that we are doing and to evaluate and create new tactics as we move forward with our CW promise. Information will be sent out using Parent Square, social media, our district website, and other means to reach as many people as possible. So please be on the lookout for that. It will be out before our next board meeting, so we wanted to make mention of that. And we will do our best to get the word out so that everybody can participate and provide their feedback. That's all I have for this evening.
All right, any questions?
Yes, Mrs. Hunt, I know we previously talked about enrollments, but I know that in your district report, in your report to the board, to us, your weekly report, I should say, you had mentioned around the end of August that our enrollment was picking up. And could you just tell us where we are right now with our enrollment numbers?
Sure, we are, what happens in August is we see a lot of movement. So we start earlier, so we might see what we believe is going to be an increase. So we have a lot of meetings, we have a lot of new students, but then by the time, I believe in Central Ohio, the last school to start is Columbus. So typically, usually about 2 weeks after they start is when we start to get the withdrawals. So if a kid hasn't shown up, because of us starting so early, them starting a little later, we start to balance out. So our enrollment numbers, although we have a lot of those that will increase in late August, you start to see that balance out by the time the students are withdrawing. Our numbers are right where they're a little bit under where we predicted them, I believe, for this school year. Just, like 10 off is what we ended up going. When you look at that across the grade levels, it's not much, but our predictions were pretty dead on. Kindergarten numbers are lower this year than what we expected them to be. But again, I think when we go full day, we're going to start to see that huge gain, and then the jump that we see right now between kindergarten and first grade, we'll still see something because we generally see the growth in the transition years. Mr. Whitladger reported tonight how we have the jump of students between second and third grade, very similar. So we're still, it's not as if we're growing so much that we're creating an issue in our classrooms.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Moving on to district reports. Reading through the district reports, anybody have any additional questions or items they want to bring up?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So on the Indian Trail report, we have an OSU Vision Clinic on October 17th. Do we know if that's for all students, or is that only for particular students?
Come on up, Leah. Just make sure your mic's on too, Leah. Thank you.
Am I on? Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be up here. We send home a permission slip and parents sign up.
Okay. And then another question, and I guess this is for both you and Winchester Trails. So PTO on your calendar has a fall festival on October 20th from 5 to 6:30. And on Winchester Trails calendar, there's a trunk or treat also on October 20th. I'm assuming those have been,
Yes, they're the same thing.
okay,
It's a fall fest with a trunk or treat.
got it,
included.
okay. I'd hate for two events to go on at the same time.
Right? I gotta get the trunk or treat with the candy, right?
I'm gonna come
The
over,
purpose.
I'm coming over to get candy,
I know, right? Me too.
so, that's it, thank you.
If you haven't been to the trunk or treat, it's a super cute. The teachers they dress up, decorate their cars. It's,
Parents dress up, it's fun.
Yeah,
Kids come in
kids
their
love it.
costumes. It's a fun night.
and we're all invited.
Yes, get candy. All right, thank you.
And then for Winchester Trails, on October 12th, there's an 8 to 10 coffee and conversation. Who's the intended audience for that? Since you guys sit in the back, I'm making you walk tonight.
We sent out an invitation to our families if parents would like to come in for coffee and conversation, providing a continental breakfast to where if they want to come in and just chat in the morning and talk to Mr. Lawson and myself. And if they have any questions about what's going on with the building, they're more than welcome to bring them.
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, it's the first time we've done that.
Is it just like they come in, it's like kind of self-serve, or do you kind of have something like they sit down and like kind of mingle,
I think we're working, I'm
figuring it out?
but I'm kind of thinking like a mingle type thing and, you know, welcome them into the building and just hopefully get more parents involved in the building, come see the building too.
I know on Parent Square and other platforms, the ad mentions for anyone interested to RSVP. Has anyone RSVP'd as of yet?
I don't believe I've gotten permission to see the actual, you know, who's coming yet.
Okay.
But so I think it just went out last week, so we just need enough numbers to know how much to purchase and let Tammy know at Chartwell's of how much to get for the breakfast.
Yeah, and I do want to mention, it said that you're not required to RSVP either. You could just show up.
Yes, absolutely, yes. The more the merrier. Thank you. Thank you.
I might come order extra coffee.
You have to get Starbucks that day.
Yeah, right. So for the high school, Mr. Svetanovich. Did I pronounce that right? I feel like they pronounce it wrong at every football game, by the way. I'm pretty sure. You have a personal, on the professional development day, you had something called the Professional Development Shuffle.
Yeah.
So as people sign up for that, how are you determining the observee opportunities?
Yeah, so that actually, it's not just for the professional development day, it's
Okay.
for from now through the end of the year.
Okay.
So the goal is we're gonna get people who are willing to observe, people who are willing to be observed, and allow them to kind of mix and match.
Okay.
And we're gonna work with our instructional coach. If anybody's like, hey, I really wanna work on classroom management, for example. She could potentially hook them up with a veteran teacher who's kind of had some very similar classes to provide them with that opportunity. But ultimately, the goal is math doesn't go observe math because they're all in the same corridor, they're all in the same wing.
Right.
So math, maybe go see English, science, go see social studies. Have the opportunity to see what other people are doing with similar students, but through a different lens.
Okay. And then you called out the Winchester Classic in your report. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
As a call out to anybody who's listening, they still need volunteers.
Yep.
National Honor Society students, this would be a great volunteer opportunity for you to get some hours. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely.
I think that's it. Yep, that's it for me.
I did have a question in regard to technology. I understand that there's been like an increase in tickets put in for Chromebooks regarding like the keys, the touchpad. It was mentioned in the report that it could be a possible manufacturer issue. Just wanted to know if that has been further investigated.
So that question, JP is back in our room, making sure that all of this works. So I will get that information.
Here
Oh, look at this.
Here comes Superman.
It's the man behind the curtain.
Thank you, JP.
The increase that we saw is fairly new. We just saw it over the since we've returned back to school. So we're not sure exactly what it is. We're monitoring that currently. So in the next couple of months, we should be able to tell whether or not it's actually a device issue or some kind of operational issue from where things were stored over the summer and then opened up and like, oh, it's not working.
So you're still in that beginning phase
Yeah.
of looking at that?
Yeah, we just realized in the numbers that increase was there, and we had a large number of those reports over the last month.
Okay.
And those are the existing Chromebooks,
Yes,
not your new ones out of box.
We had with the teacher Chromebooks, which are the 3110s, but they were touch screens. We had a large number. When I say a large number, I'm talking like maybe 5% at most. But it's still more than we've seen in the past with new devices sent out. But the devices that we saw with the students were primarily previous year's devices.
Okay. So they would have been stored and then opened back up and,
Whether stored at home with the high schoolers or stored in our storage containers and stuff over the summer for K through 8.
I have a question
Yes.
while you're up here. So you had mentioned in your report that the wiring project with Forward Edge, there's some sort of delay in it, and because they're wiring the new kindergarten bunch of classrooms, their delay is not gonna affect
No,
that.
that was already on hold anyway.
Okay,
Because they can't get in and do that until
yeah, right,
the foundation
Okay.
of the structure and everything's in place.
okay,
So that's not a change there. They just were not able to get in over the summer
okay,
and do the work that needed to be
Okay.
done.
okay.
So we're looking at ways to get them in outside of the school day.
I just wanted to
do
make
that.
sure, because I know that
Yeah.
that wiring piece is separate from the actual construction of the building piece, so
Yep,
making sure that that's not gonna delay it would be.
yeah, that was already a planned
Okay.
delay. It was the stuff that they were supposed to start this summer that was delayed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? All righty. We'll move on to the consent agenda. I need a motion for approval.
Second.
Mr. Butler and Ms. Talley. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So let's see here, 2 is our donations. We had a donation from OHSAA to the high school athletics, and we had 3 separate donations to the Indian Trail Garden Project. So we just want to thank them all for their donations. Number 3 are the minutes from the August 21st board meeting and the September 6th special meeting. Number 4, we have our certified personnel. We do have a letter of resignation for the purpose of retirement for Christina Frassini, and that will be effective June 1st. Christina is a teacher at the middle school, and she has been in the district, I believe this is year 21, and it will be year 34 overall. So we just want to thank her and wish her the best. We still get her for the remainder of this year, so we wish her the best on her retirement. We have 2 different unpaid leave requests from our certified staff, and you will see stipends. 2 separate sets of stipends. The first is for our resident educator stipend. This is annually, we have our new teachers that either have a mentor or a facilitator through the resident educator program. So you'll notice in the notes listed there what they are being paid for, either as a facilitator, a mentor, or both. And then you also have your national board master teacher stipends for the 23-24 school year. Number 5, we have our classified personnel. We have a resignation from a paraprofessional that was for the end of August. And then we have several requests for unpaid leave. And then also you'll notice a request for a suspension of employment for military active duty, and that is for a bus driver. We have our classified recommendations. We have several. We are approving our school security officer, as well as 2 paraprofessionals and a bus driver. And we have several substitute classified recommendations as well. Number 6 is our supplemental personnel. We are having recensions for several contracts that we approved at the May board meeting, and you'll see we are hiring back 2 of those individuals in their position for both high school soccer as an assistant.
It was a 3-way split. One coach did not coach, so then it became a 2-way split.
And then we're approving Mr. Davies as a volunteer middle school football coach. We also are asking you to approve an hourly rate of $15 per hour for gate workers at athletic events. That's something that we've discussed over the last month with the football ticket takers, and that will be paid through the athletic funds. Number 7, we have a private tuition contract that we're asking you to approve for students attending New Story Schools, Eagle Wings, and Franklin County Board of DD. Number 8, we have 2 overnight field trip requests. One is for cross-country, and the other is for OMUN. Just a note on the cross-country trip, that they were expecting to run much later in the day, and they found out just a few days before that they were actually going to be running at 8 a.m. So the fact that it was up in Tiffin, they did go up the night before. And number 9, we have an early graduation request for Brooke Bradley at Winchester High School to graduate September 18th, which is today.
I have a question.
This thing.
The $15 per hour for the gate workers at the athletic events, do they have to qualify under any of the statutes that have to do with pupil profile or pupil approval of those certificates?
Are you referring to the pupil activity permit? No, they do
they
not.
have to get a permit or anything?
Nope.
So we don't have to check their background or anything to do the gate work around our students?
I think
They will have a background check, yeah. They will have to have a criminal record at the gate, yes. We're gonna recommend that these be non-employees. If they are employees, it creates a whole different thing. We would have to pay them through payroll. And the people that Jacob has in mind are non-employees at the time. So right now, they would be paid just through accounts payable. Same as arbiter pay, like officials are paid. That way they get their money quicker. And then we don't have to run them through payroll. But if we do happen to come along and an employee wants to do it, and we can't find people that are non-employees, then we'll take a different route and have to run them through payroll.
Do we have a estimate of how many hours per event that they would be asked to work? Like, is it 2 hours, 4 hours, and do we know what that budget looks like? What the cost overall is?
Currently, when we have football games, the gates open an hour before, and they go through, as of right now, they're going through halftime. We had a lot of discussion surrounding having, really what it was parent volunteers having to be almost a security type person at a gate, especially at the football game. So it would be, if you think they would start taking tickets at 6 and halftime is not, it depends on the day, right? But, so 3 hours potentially. And then that just depends too. We've talked with Jacob and he may want to keep them longer to then stand at the gate for assistance or whatnot, so.
Depends on
he
what he
would have
does.
that
I mean,
flexibility.
cash collections are coming to effective the next home game. So October 1st, we're required to accept cash at the gates again. So athletic director may have them help maybe balance the tickets to the cash collected. I'm not sure what his plans are with that. I can send you the athletic budget. I know they're in great shape when it comes. You're talking probably for 5 football games, you're probably talking no more than $5,000. That's probably even high. If we were to find non-employees that would work the gate.
Is this only for football, or is this gonna be for basketball and all other sports?
We're not sure yet. I think we're going to start with football, and then we're going to take the recommendation of the athletic director moving forward on
And
what they need.
do we know how many we're gonna be having at the games? Like, if it's $15 per person for 3 hours, for how many people? Do we have a number of how many people?
I believe they used 6 the last few games. So I don't know if that's normal or if that was more because of us having the weapon detection
Typically, you
system
would
or
need
whatnot.
4. I mean, you're going to have 2 on each side because you typically don't want the collector handing the ticket and accepting cash. You want some controls in place. So you want the person buying the tickets from one person, handing the ticket to another. Otherwise, not everyone, it creates the possibility of not everyone paying if they happen to know that person, and instead of taking the ticket and taking money, so it eliminates that kind of control piece.
And what are the qualifications? Are they gonna be posted somewhere, and will this be available to anyone to apply for equally, or are we already have people does he already have people identified that he wants to put into this position? This is a higher position, right?
Yeah, I don't believe we'd post it.
required to?
Can I go back to the school security officer? And just let folks know about that, because it's.
Yes,
it's
100%.
It's a new position, and, our striving, for safety in the buildings and the district. I'd like to highlight that, if you could talk about it a little
Absolutely, I would
bit.
love to. So, we were able to hire a retired officer from Fairfield County who will be working in our buildings at the elementary. We'll be on our elementary campus for the full days. So we'll be there beginning at drop-off, a little bit before drop-off, starting at Winchester Trail through Indian Trail, be at both buildings, and then we'll end their day for pickup at the end of the day. But yeah, he's been great. He's been here, and it just provides us with that extra presence and extra security, getting to know the buildings. I believe he's been in classrooms reading, just building the relationships with the kiddos, and he's present. So it's been great for us. That position does still fall, we did an MOU with Fairfield County. It does still fall underneath the Fairfield County policies and procedures. We are just paying him as an employee at the rate of $30 an hour. He will work for us for I believe we went with 186 days at the 7.5 hours a day. So he'll be able to be there every day that our kiddos are in school. And then he's also, the plan is that he will also help us with some trainings that we have on our professional development days.
That's the second position that we brought in last year or so. So that allows us to have coverage at all of our campuses now. Because I know before we had one resource officer, and obviously we were using the resources we had, but this definitely gives us wider coverage, and it gives us more of a proactive approach to being safe and obviously keeping our kids safe in our building. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that was an important position that we just bring it in.
Yeah, we hired our second school resource officer last October, and that's when we brought in the Madison Township officer. And what we found was, although we wanted the flexibility to move wherever the need was, it was happening, but a lot of that was pulling. Our high school SRO was staying at the high school the majority of the day, and then the middle school SRO would be at the middle school most of the day, and traveling down to the elementaries when they could. So this allows us to have an officer on each campus, as you mentioned, which just provides us that extra layer of protection and security, and building the relationships so that our students are able to know who he is and, reach out to him and talk with him and play at the recess with him and all of the things.
So he is a deputy of Fairfield County Police
Yes,
Department.
Correct, yes. The way.
He doesn't have a vehicle,
He does not have a vehicle.
but he is a licensed.
He's required to meet all of the
deputy.
training requirements,
Okay.
have all of the, is it classifications or certifications that they would need to go through. The way it was described to me, which made sense, was it's like a volunteer firefighter. They're still under the umbrella of that fire department. They're volunteering their time, so to speak. It's very similar to that. It's just we're paying him.
It kind of fell into our lap. Fairfield County Sheriff's Office has had trouble the last several years actually being able to get SROs to schools. So they had, I want to say probably 6 officers retire over the last couple of years. I know 3 were placed at Fairfield Union and maybe 1 or 2 at Bloom Carroll. So I think they're in year 2 of
Correct.
this,
Yep.
to where they did the MOU to be able to say, hey, these people are retired. They would like to still keep working and doing this to help the schools. So they tried to find a way, since they couldn't hire officers and fill the SRO need. This kind of came about and started with 2 other districts, and they had another one. So they reached out, and we obviously were going to take that, especially at the cost that we're getting it at. It's basically the officer minus the overhead. So it was a deal and a value that we just couldn't pass up.
And to reiterate, this is not a mall cop. This is
Correct.
This is a deputy of Fairfield
Yes.
County.
Yes.
And so any domestic or custody issues that would happen on the Indian Trail, Winchester Trail campus, he can step in as
He can step in, yes.
as the
and-
law and manage that for us.
Yes, if
Okay.
there was any need for transport, that's where he would call in backup for transport.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do
Thank
know
you.
some other districts, I don't remember which one, they have, purchased a car, and then they had it outfitted to that local jurisdiction. That is an option maybe long-term for us, if this is a thing that will continue. I don't know how long, Mr. Diamora is looking to do the retire and work for a school district. I would say a few years. If this is a path that Fairfield County Sheriff's Office continues to take and it's their ability to place, then we may explore that option at one point in the next year or two, to be able to have that police cruiser presence, and us actually have that vehicle. So it is an option, for us to possibly do that down the road.
I appreciate his question too, because that was part of why I was asking the questions around the gate workers, because I know that, with the issues that we've had at games in the past, and the reason why we decided to go with gate workers was for, safety and security of our, community and our students that are attending these events. So even though we're asking to approve $15 an hour for gate workers, I guess I wanted to understand a little bit more about what their qualifications would be, because we kind of know what we're asking for an SRO, because they're going to be on our staff, and we have more of a definition of what their requirements are. I wanted to understand a little bit more about what does that $15 cover. Are they going to require to have certain training? Are they going to have any sort of safety kind of thing, since they're going to be gatekeepers and they're not just parents volunteering, so to speak? What are the requirements of them? And I know that's not around the $15 per hour that's being asked here. I just wanted to understand a little bit more about what is the gate worker going to be required to do?
They're not security.
Yeah.
They're not being added for security. Mr. Durbin came last year and wanted to possibly do this, and we was like, just hold off, because we kept getting volunteers. They're having a hard time getting volunteers to collect the money at the gates. So we're getting to where we have to beg people to do it, and maybe providing some compensation to them, or someone will allow that burden to be lifted from the athletic director, to where they're not having to chase and beg people to volunteer to do ticket collections.
And I totally agree with that, and the reason why is because I don't want to put us at any kind of liability or issue with someone that we think is supposed to be security at the gate and collecting money, because we've had these issues in the past with issues going on with the wrong people coming in and searching them, and now we'll be searching them. If all they're doing is just being, collecting tickets, and that's what we're paying them for, and it's clear to that, and we don't have any other set expectations as well.
Yeah, I will clarify too, just because we were on the football game. So what we're currently doing with the security of the weapon detection system. So we have the ticket takers, and then they will walk through the security, the weapon detection. What we're planning for is we have 7 administrators. The high school administrators are out with the kiddos. They're out doing what they would typically do during the football game. We are working the weapon detection system to bring them in, and then we have had a security team. The last 2 games, we will continue for the remainder of the season, at home games, have a security team that then, if the need be of searching somebody, would be in charge of that. They are trained to do that. Our district administrators are not. We can search a bag, we can search a object, but we are not searching a person. And then we're working with the police department. We will have no less than 9, usually 10 per game, of officers that will be in the area, that will be walking around. They all have their assignments, and we will always have one that is right there with us at the weapon detection center, so that if there is ever anything that we would need them for, they are right there and ready to spring into action.
Thank you for clarifying. I
Of course.
appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions on the consent agenda? If not, Ms. Roberts, please call roll.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes. Consent passes 5-0. On to discussion, nope, jumped ahead, sorry. Action items. Action item number 1, resolution authorizing owner's representative services. I need a motion. I'll go ahead and motion that. I need a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Butler. Mr. Roberts up?
So we're gonna add this, it's really an owner's agent to the Indian Trail project. All OFCC projects require the owner's agent. In our last project, we had some things happen with warranties, with things not being installed properly, and it was a fight for our maintenance supervisor. So this essentially gives us another body to make sure change orders are legit compared to what's in the specs and all those different things. It gives us another person without overhead to be able to monitor the project. Everyone knows this person with our Elford construction team, our architects. They know how this company works. They're around with a lot of projects. So really, they're here to help save us money. Throughout this project, there's going to be hundreds of RFIs that result possibly in change orders. Where I've got a full-time job, Mike Britch has got a full-time job, Guy's got a full-time job. This will help us to make sure, one, the project is meeting the specs. That way, if they change out a floor spec, we're getting equivalent value. They're not just running change orders through the process. We all know that a lot of these companies subcontractors will bid on the project, and they bid low intentionally, knowing that they're gonna come in and change order it to death. This person's there to make sure that's not gonna happen. So in the long run, the $50,000, $54,000 is probably gonna save us substantial dollars through change orders, and make sure we get the warranties and make sure that the project is on time and everything is installed properly. And if it's not, then we make the architect or the construction manager responsible for fixing those things.
You said this is a company that has a lot of experience with Elford and is really well known in Central Ohio, so
Yes.
they're comfortable moving forward with this company.
Yeah, they just worked with Alford and Logan Elm, and they just worked with Alford on the Taze Valley Athletic Project that they did a few years ago with their big facility.
What's the budget for that?
It's we're approving it up to 2 years, but I think we'll only need them for a year. But legal wanted to go ahead and put it in just in case. But our project's going to wrap up in August 5th, the substantially approved date. We'll have a walkthrough, and by September we'll be good. And then they said they would hold on because we'll have an 11-month walkthrough on the building. If anything has changed or anything has broken, then they'll do the 11th month walkthrough and then take it back, any problems, to the construction manager or the architect. Really just gives us a built-in expert to know exactly when specs are changed, when change orders are in, to make sure those things are legitimate. We trust Elford, we trust Shore, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and all of us are trying to save money or make money, so it just gives us an extra level of trust and support.
All right, what level of approval authority will they have, like on change orders? If they're reviewing a change order, will they be able to approve the change order, or will it have to come through?
It'll still come through us.
Okay.
But they'll either say this shouldn't happen, and they'll fight back with the architect and the construction manager and kind of push back on them to say this shouldn't be a change order, this is within your scope, this is within your specs, they should have bid this, those types of things.
Right.
But if it is a legit change order, they'll bring it to Mr. Bridge, maintenance supervisor, and say, this is legit, this is why. And it kind of gives Mike another resource to where he's not tangled up in the weeds with the construction manager and the architect constantly battling
Yep.
with everything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
5-0. Action item number 2, fiscal year 2024 appropriations. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. George and Ms. Barnes.
This is an annual resolution. We have to have permanent appropriations filed by October 1st with the county auditor. We approved temporary appropriations in July. This will be the permanent appropriations for the year. We cannot legally write a check without permanent appropriations, so this authorizes the school district to write a check from all of these funds and cannot exceed these amounts. For example, I will budget all of them out 100% with the exception of the general fund, the 034 fund, the bond, and the PI. The rest of the funds are all special revenue tied to a purpose. So if they want to spend all the money, it's technically their money to spend. So we do appropriate all those funds, but I do not appropriate all of the general fund balance and the PI and the maintenance facility. If we do get close to the 52 million or exceed that, I would have to come back and ask for an amendment from the school board because I cannot exceed appropriations. So it kind of gives us some control also that the full amount's not appropriated, and we have to come back to the Board of Education to be within budgets. And then within this is estimated resources. In this. So we have our unencumbered balances, your estimated resources, and appropriations cannot exceed this column. So you cannot spend more than you're expecting to bring in. That's why these all balance out to zero, and then we've got balances left in the funds that I mentioned.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Roberts?
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Item passes 5-0. Action item number 3, maintenance fund transfer. I'll go ahead and make a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Ms. Talley.
This is an annual transfer. It's part of the high school renovation project that we did with OFCC. State law requires us to have 1/2 mil of maintenance requirement for 23 years. We moved that inside millage and it is posted to our permanent improvement, and then we're required to transfer the $208,380 into that 034 maintenance project facility fund to help upkeep the building that the state assisted with building. So we'll be transferring money all the way up to 2040 in that amount. The good news is our values go up. We only have to transfer the $208,000 and we keep the remaining in our permanent improvement fund.
Any questions? Mr. Roberts?
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. So we're doing that every year until 2040. Does it make any sense to just do it all at once? Or does it make sense not to do it all at once?
We don't, so it's collected through the real estate tax, so we wouldn't have that
We wouldn't have
money in the
funds
PI
to do it.
to do it,
Okay.
yeah.
There's no
Okay.
advantage to pay off
No.
early. No.
And it really gives us, I kind of look at this fund as kind of a savings for our facilities. When money does start to kind of diminish and we can't transfer to PI or we don't have a full-time permanent improvement levy at the time, then we can now shift and save money through the general fund with maintenance supplies in our core buildings, because it is restricted to our core buildings. It had to be a part of the OFCC building, so we wouldn't be able to do athletic projects. We wouldn't be able to touch this facility. We'd be able to touch the 4 main buildings, education buildings. And it has to be for capital needs. It can't be for like general custodial supplies or things like that. It has to be on roofing, flooring, and upgrades to the building.
If we added an additional building at some point in the future for educational purposes, would the amount that we would be required to transfer go up, or would this amount then be able to be used on that?
It stays exactly the same because it locked in
Right.
of the valuation of the year that we started and signed the agreement on the high school project.
Okay. But we could use it.
We could use it if that building became if we created a new master plan and included that new building a part of the OFCC project, which
Okay.
we would.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Ms. Tally?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes? Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Action moves 5-0. Action item number 4, resolution to establish a termination benefits fund. I need a motion. I'll go ahead and take a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Mr. Butler, thank you.
So this is a severance fund. A lot of school districts have this. When people retire and have sick leave balances, that can be anywhere from $10,000 to $35,000, and it kind of varies. So this helps us to sustain a budget. So next month, I'll probably bring a transfer, say, of $100,000 to the board, and we'll do that for 5 years. We'll create a $500,000 balance into this fund, and any retirement and severance would come out of that fund instead of coming out of the general fund. The whole point of it is to try to offset when you have a big year in the general fund. So if you have 10 people retire that are teachers, that could possibly be $200,000 to $250,000 that you were not expecting out of your general fund budget in that particular year. So it helps kind of sustain your forecast, but create a fund for when we have a large percentage of teachers or staff retiring.
So how is that budgeted for now?
It's just budgeted within the forecast,
Okay.
and it's a guess. I just usually budget $100,000.
Is it a line somewhere, and is it one of the lines? in there?
Salaries.
It's in salaries. Okay.
Salaries, yep.
How
Okay.
close have you been getting to that 100,000 mark? Are you usually under? Sometimes you're going over. Like,
You can look at 10 years, sometimes we're over, and recently we've been under. With the law changes, when they took it from 30 to 35, it kind of pushed some retirements out, but we do have teachers now getting up to those points to where we're eventually going to see kind of an onslaught of it. So I just kind of want to be able to balance the budget and know exactly and control what we're spending, get it out, and then when we do have those big years, we've got the fund balance to take the hit and not worry about it in the forecast or the general fund.
So how often do you plan on transferring funds to the fund?
We'll probably do it every year for the next 5 years and kind of reevaluate it up to that point. I'll bring it to you every single year. I'm not going to bring you 5 years worth of transfers. So
If it's heavy, we might back off a couple years.
back
You
off,
just keep
yeah.
it. Yeah.
But then if we start seeing an onslaught, maybe the transfer is greater the following year. Really, we just want to control that expenditure as much as we can.
We already, just this year alone, we've already know that there are, I think 4 or 5, Cindy, is that right? 4 or 5 retirements of individuals who have been around for a while. When we went from 30 to 35 years, we did put it off, like individuals put it off, but now they dropped it to where you can now go at 34. So I believe we're gonna probably be getting hit a little bit, almost double in the next few years of that to where, and then people will plan for it a little bit more. But I believe we already have quite a few that we know are retiring at the end of the year that have been around for a while, so their severance packages are probably gonna be pretty big.
And it's a particular statute, section 5705-13B in the Ohio Revised Code. So it's law allows us to do it, and a lot of people actually recommend to do it to make sure we, like I said, are maintaining the budget and we're kind of setting up ourselves for when those high needs come.
So what level are you going to fund this fund at? So are you gonna fund it at 500,000 and try to keep a balance of 300,000 or?
Probably 300,000 is probably my target.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, will transfer, you'll have to approve the transfer. This is just giving me approval to even set up the fund and the accounting system.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see like what our average payout for this type of benefit has been. Maybe just look at last 10 years or last 15 years and see what we paid out. Figure out an average, and then we can decide what whether it makes sense, or how much makes sense, not whether it makes sense.
Yep.
But what the fund level should be.
Any other questions? Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Tally?
Yes.
Action moves 5-0. Action item number 5, resolution to make provisional changes to board policy to comply with House Bill 33. I need a motion.
Second.
All right, Mr. George. And Ms. Barnes. Go ahead, Ms. Hunt, I
Yep.
believe.
So this allows us to have policy that is not changed yet reflect the House Bill 33. So Ohio Department of Education will be changed to the Department of Education and Workforce and/or the Department of Children and Youth. So it would allow us, wherever it might say ODE within policy, it refers to one of those two. Also, with the, I believe it's state superintendent, we now will be moving to the superintendent of public instruction. So again, those, it just allows for language so that we are following the new House Bill 33 without going in and touching every policy, which we will eventually get to, but it will happen over time.
Questions? Mr. Roberts?
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Ms. Tally?
Yes.
Action moves 5-0. Last action item is additional payment in lieu of transportation. I'll go ahead and make a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Ms. Tally. And I'm sure Mr. Roberts.
I have nothing to add. I think we've approved this for the last couple meetings. And
Yes, we have.
I think
Any
we're going to continue
questions?
to have requests trickle in.
Do we have the ability, do we have like a deadline, or is there a possibility of placing a deadline that says, hey, if you don't let us know by this date? Is that, I don't know, I mean, is there any legal ability to do that, or?
Actually,
There is one, I think it's
I think we talked about
February.
that last. I should know this by heart by now. But I know.
Do I like push this?
Yeah, it's, is it green or red? Green button on the front. Oh, no. There you go. There's a green button.
Excuse me. Yeah, I've got a bad cold. As I understand it, there really almost isn't a deadline, but what happens is that once the end of the school year comes, the treasurer's office will validate with that school district how many days that child actually was in attendance. So if the child only attended half the year, they're only gonna get half a share of payment in lieu. I think, does that answer what you're kind of questioning, or?
There is
But we-
definitely a
But we
deadline.
cannot set a, after this, well, yeah, it is
There is a
February.
deadline because
February.
we had a situation this past year where the individual didn't meet the deadline.
Yes,
I just don't know what it
And so we do have
is.
a February
Yeah.
deadline.
At that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the law, it's changed that we have to approve these each month. If you, in the past, you haven't seen them every month.
Yeah, we
But
have
as
not.
they come in, we are now required to approve them as they come in. That's the change that you see of seeing them every month versus what we used to do.
Talking about this again next month,
Oh, yeah,
won't
for
we?
sure.
Yes.
We might have an
Mr.
deadline.
Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Ms. Tally?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Action moves 5-0. That wraps up the action items. We're going to move into discussion items. And we're going to, with a first reading for board policy, and I'm sure Ms. Hunt will take this.
I will, and it's gonna be a quick overview. We did meet and talk about this in our work session, a couple weeks ago, so we went through all policies. So at this point, I'll just turn it over and ask if there's any questions.
No, I don't have any questions.
Per our discussion, we did add in the Narcan policy, which we talked about, and the nurses did support that.
And for the at-home viewing folks, there's about 25, 30 policies that we went through at a work session board meeting. We're just not pencil whipping this. We've already gone through it at length, and this is first reading of it at this discussion item.
Yeah,
so.
and there is a summary on the board agenda that the public can see if they need to
Okay.
see what changes and why we're making the changes.
Okay. And no action being taken, it's just discussion. Second discussion item that we have some policy and student handbooks for the high school and athletics. Kind of an open discussion area, and I'm sure Ms. Barnes will lead us off with this.
Hi, I was approached by a parent that homeschools their child, and it was a surprise to me that we have a policy that restricts a student from participating in homecoming or the prom or 8th grade field trip if they are homeschooled because they are homeschooled. I personally, after looking at the policy and looking at the Ohio Revised Code, also contacting some other school districts to see what they're doing, I didn't find any other school district, and I didn't call them all, I just called a few randomly. I didn't find another school district that was totally preventing them from attending homecoming or the prom. One school district, you could be a guest to the prom and a guest to homecoming. We restrict them in that they can't come to homecoming or the homecoming, but they can come to the prom as a guest. One of the reasons why I think we should reconsider this policy, and I've talked to my board members, but not sure that I got any consensus, but one of the reasons why I think we should reconsider this is that homeschool kids are part of our community. They go to school, they play on sports or athletics with our students at our high school, at our middle school. They are allowed to do that. They do not have a building where they would participate in homecoming or the prom because they are homeschooled. They're not chartered. They're not going to a charter school. And their team members have expressed as well that they feel really bad for them that they can't go to homecoming when they are putting on our uniform and representing us at a homecoming game or a homecoming event. But when it comes to going to the homecoming dance, they're not allowed to go. I don't see, in the spirit of the law or in the spirit of the statute, it seems like they were trying to include these things, but somehow it was interpreted by our school district that the student is not necessarily entitled to that. Other districts don't have a problem with it as long as they are on an athletic, team or they're homeschooled, not necessarily charter school, but homeschooled. So I'm just asking, and it doesn't have to happen today, I'm asking that we take a further look at this policy, because it is a policy, even though there's a statute that's helping us to back up the policy. It's not preventing us from making a change in our policy. So I'm asking that we look at that policy and look at the students that we are excluding, especially when we're saying 18% of the kids in our school district could either be going to a homeschool or a charter school. I don't know how many of that 18% are homeschooled. But I think we should look at the policy and think about the spirit of the statute and the spirit of our school district. It seems mean-spirited to me not to allow them to go to homecoming if they're participating in our sports and a team member on some of our teams. So that was my thought about that, and I leave it open for the rest of the board if they have comments.
Hi, thank you, Vanjie. I respect your position. However, I view it a little differently. It is my understanding and my desire for our Canal Winchester students to exclusively have experiences unique to them as being part of the campus. I feel that it's important for that solidarity as well and for our students. And I guess I would want to know more if there are home educated students, charter students, private school students who fit in that category where they participate in extracurricular activities for Canal Winchester, but they had a desire to attend events that they weren't able to attend. I kind of want to know if is it more of a wider spread issue or interest out there. So if we could do some kind of survey, because I understand those students still have to report to our school if they are choosing to go charter, home educated and so forth. So we should be able to kind of look into that a little bit more to see if there is a need to perhaps look at revisiting the policy. But where it stands for me, I don't have an issue with the current policy as it stands.
Thank you, Monica, and I appreciate the suggestion of doing a survey. That's probably something that would be good to know in lieu of knowing that there's 18% out there that are in the district that don't go to school in our school buildings.
Yeah, and Monica, I agree with you. I would like to see what the what's the impact that we're having by keeping our current policy. And I mean, I guess Matt and Kevin, you guys might have some input on that. Have you guys have been around the board since the dinosaurs were around. So, I mean, have you seen an impact, or have we had other parents or other students, homeschool students reach out to us in the past about this?
I personally have not had a homeschool student reach out to me about this issue, so like Mrs. Tyler was saying, this would be good information. Oh, sorry, I'm still getting used to our new system. I personally haven't had a homeschool parent reach out to me or a student, but I would be interested to find out more information, because I know, obviously, working in a public school and obviously having experience with charter schools, I know that obviously there's a separation. I know there's a reason why, and I know our charter students have opportunities, but I wasn't aware that homeschool students had the desire, because I know obviously those parents choose to homeschool them, so I'd be curious to find out more information. So that'd be good to find out, and then obviously we could look at our policy moving forward, but I'd be curious to find out the details on that. But I know as it stands right now, we do have a policy in place that obviously specifically states that those students would not be allowed to attend on-campus events, but obviously, like I said, I'd be open to find out more information about it.
Megan, do we have any way to identify students in the district that are not enrolled in the district?
That are homeschool versus charter school.
So I was thinking through that when you were mentioning it, and I actually pulled up our survey results from last year, because we did ask on last year's survey if they didn't send their kids to Canal Winchester schools, where they did send them and why. If I recall correctly, we got maybe less than 10 on that survey. As somebody mentioned earlier, there is a homeschool notification process that families are supposed to follow of turning in paperwork to the district, so we could perhaps do some kind of targeted outreach to that group of people, but I'm not sure. I'm not very familiar with that data, so I don't know what it contains.
Yeah, I mean, aren't they legally required to report, like, by the end of August each year if they're not going to enroll their kids in the district?
They are legally required to report to us
Okay.
if they want to be homeschooled or if they're attending a private school. However, I will say that when Nick shared the number of students that were on the census, we don't have that many students on paper that aren't with us. So, you know, when you're looking at them transferring out or whatnot, that number is not what we would reflect in what we are losing to private schools, which means that there are probably a lot of families specific to private schools who we may never know that they're coming to our district. Now, homeschool, it's very clear, the requirements that they are to notify the district, but private schools, if they never start with us, there is, I don't believe, any notification that they would be required to tell us where they are.
No,
Now-
charter and private are different. We do know the charter school number. We do have that in student information. I want to say it's up over 200 now. Pre-COVID, we were right around 50. So that is up 150 to 175. I can pull that number and send that to you. The privates are the ones that we struggle to kind of guess. But, I mean, if we have 100 or 225, 250 charter, I would.
And we're over 100 homeschooled that has notified us.
Yes, so there's 350, or close to 350 there. And then we place another, I don't know, 30 to 50 out of district. We have some at other places. So, I mean, I would venture to say there's probably at least 200, 150 to 200 that are attending privates. You got your Bishop Hartley's and Reedy's and Harvest Preps and those types of private
But,
schools.
yeah, the situation that we're talking about doesn't apply to that,
Correct.
though.
And let me be clear, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about charter schools.
Yeah.
I'm talking about homeschool, kids who don't have another building that they're being homeschooled and they don't have a facility to participate with other kids in any kind of an environment where there would be a prom or a homecoming.
Charter and homeschooled are treated exactly the same.
Actually, the statutes in here are different. There's two different statutes. There's one for homeschool and there's one for charter schools, and there's one for non-public schools.
And there are charter schools that do not attend a building.
Yeah, there are
So-
some charter schools that don't attend a building.
But the other piece is specific to athletics. If they're playing sports for us, they should, and we should have information on file to show that they are, what they are doing, specific to those homeschooled students that are athletes, or private school students, or charter school students.
Which for me opens up another conversation to figure out, I mean, we hold our students that attend Canal Winchester to a standard of academics that they have to be eligible to play athletics and sports and band and participate. A homeschooled student, we don't know what their grades are. We don't, if they're not reporting it, we don't know. So they could be actually academically ineligible, but still participating with us. So
I would think if we don't have records of their academic achievement, then we would consider them ineligible for sports.
Ohio High
So,
School
to-
Athletic Association requires that they have a certain academic to
Well,
play the sport. doesn't
starting
it?
October 3rd, the laws all change.
What does it say?
And moving forward, October 3rd on, that the eligibility is, my understanding is that the parent tells us whether or not the student's eligible. And that's the word.
Okay, so if the parent can show us that they're eligible by letting us know that they're eligible,
And they don't
that's the
show,
way
they
that
just
they tell
basically
us.
share, they don't
no.
show us. We aren't checking their.
Right, but
and-
if
yeah.
they tell us that they're eligible, then that's what we have to go by, that they're telling us that they're
but
eligible.
based on what are they eligible?
Whatever the Ohio High School Athletic Association says is they have to be eligible for.
No, but at home, they're in the class of one. They're performing, not performing. I'd find it hard to believe that a homeschool student would be failing school.
Oh, I'd find it hard to believe that they are too, but
So,
I'm just saying that would
But I'm
make
saying
them
we're holding our
eligible.
kids to a different standard where we're allowing a homeschool student to come in and there's really no regulations on their academic performance.
Well, I
but they-
guess I'm saying we're allowing them to play on the sport. So they're playing
By
sports, they're
law, we
wearing
have
our
to allow
uniform.
them,
Right,
yes. By law,
right.
we
And
have to.
And I guess I'm just saying, and we can get more information from this from our parents and from the survey, if we put out a survey and we ask, but I'm asking the question, what does it harm us if they're playing on our team and they're wearing our uniform, if they're eligible to play on our team, to allow them to participate with their classmates in an activity that is homecoming and prom when they're wearing our uniform and representing us.
Well, they
That's all I'm
they can
asking.
come to prom. We're not saying they can't. They can come as
As a guest.
like most schools do. I don't have an issue with the way that we have things set today with our policy. Dave, I've not had anybody approach me about a homeschool student not being able to participate. What I'd like to do is actually detail what the law is telling us we have to allow them to participate, and then basically look at our policy and say everything else, what's left after that? Is it just the homecoming dance? Or is it more?
And I've
I
already
don't
looked-
know.
I can't say that it's not in our code, or that the code is, that we're using code we're going against the code by our policy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, as our attorney has told me, the code does not prevent us from modifying our policy to
Sure.
allow them to come to these events. And what is the spirit of our school district, that we would say no to a student, that we're happy for them to play on our sport and represent us, and we're happy if they're doing a good job at that, but we would tell them that they can't participate with their teammates to come to homecoming or prom without being a guest.
I know this might be a
That's all I'm asking.
different scenario, but, one thing I was thinking about when we talk about this issue is safety. And I know this year, safety has been a big issue. So we've had issues with different students coming in on our campus. And I think for me, if we look at this policy, one thing we got to look at is how do we control students who are not Canal Winchester students. So if they show up for homecoming, can anybody just say they're a homeschool student, and then are we obliged to let them in? So we got to really focus on, if we do look at the policy, how do we control those students who are coming in our campus and our buildings? Because if we just say, hey, anybody who's homeschooled can come into our district, if they say they live in Canal Winchester and they say they're homeschooled, then how can we say no to them? So we have to, I know it's not, we got to look at the holistic approach to this, because one thing I know, obviously, I didn't like seeing this on the news and have that negative light, because this is a great school district, and I would hate for some knucklehead to roll up to our school and say, hey, I'm going to homecoming, I'm a homeschool student, and mess it up for those kids who are doing the right thing. So we really need to look at this policy and kind of take a really holistic approach and not rush into it, because I do worry about some of those other issues that could kind of snowball and kind of come as a result of changing the policy. Because obviously I know, and it sounds like this is a good student, but we got to really be careful, because any student could roll up there and say, hey, just because I don't play sports doesn't mean I'm not a homeschool student and I should be entitled to those same opportunities. So we really got to take our time and really look at this policy. And that's just
Now,
my
I
perspective.
agree with you. I'm not saying that we should make a decision today. I'm saying we should look at the policy.
Right.
And the reason why I'm saying we should look at the policy is because of, and I'm not even saying that it necessarily, whatever we write up in the policy, or if we even change it, is one thing to consider is if they're playing on our sports and representing us, or they're doing an extracurricular that has a curriculum and they're representing us at a science fair, whatever that might be, they're already representing this school district. What is the harm in letting that student participate in another event at our school district when they're already putting on our uniform? That's all I'm asking.
And it's a tough one. And like I said, my thing, the safety piece is just like, for that homeschool student, because they're not technically enrolled with us, they're not our student. We don't really have a record of that kid, and we don't really know them in the same way that, Mr. C knows those kids that come up to the high school homecoming. He knows those kids. So it's a different perspective, because we're asking other kids and just kind of taking their word for it. So like I said, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but we just really got to be thoughtful and look at that policy. Because like I said, Mr. C or Mr. Moore, when they have that dance at the middle school, he's at that door. He knows those kids, and he knows, okay, who are my good kids? Who are kids I got to keep an eye on? And if we open it up too much, and not to say there's not good kids out there, but we really do have to take a holistic approach, because we do kind of open ourselves up some other issues, and I know we're trying to avoid that. And obviously
I think that there's a legal concern as well. I'm not a lawyer, but if you open it up to some homeschooled students, then do we have to open it up to every homeschooled student? Or if we open it up to students who only participate on sport teams, Do we have to open it up to students who tried out for the sport team but weren't quite good enough to make it? I think it's definitely worth looking at, Vanjie, and seeing, are we doing the right thing? And if we need to change it, what things do we need to be aware of if we're gonna make a change to the policy? Legally, and then from just kind of a foundational perspective of, does it make sense for us to do that or not?
And I think the survey is one thing, and the other
Yeah.
thing is looking at other districts who don't have a restriction. Have they had any issues? Because typically homeschool kids are not the kids that cause any issues. They're the kids that are excelling. So
Who kids are?
the homeschool kids. Typically, homeschool kids are excelling. I mean, a lot of them are excelling. They graduate at higher GPAs than other kids that do. And much to my surprise, what I've seen is that they do. So I'm just saying, they've got one-on-one teaching and training, and a lot of times they do fine as homeschool kids.
Definitely don't know that.
I don't, yeah, that's.
Well, I'll get some data and provide it, because I have seen some data on it.
I agree, there are definitely some amazing homeschool students, but I'm sure that there are also some.
Well,
I would've been
there's
first.
always
I would've
some
been-
that you could find of anything, yes.
Yeah, I
There
would
are
have been
always
first in
some
my
that you could
class
find.
if I was homeschooled. And that definitely wasn't the case.
But I think,
So we just don't
Megan,
know
I
that.
mean, if homeschool students are supposed to report to the district by the end of August, maybe you can pull data, or maybe you can find a way to grab that data, and we can start reaching out. And, I mean, I know mailers, most of them is probably gonna be like a direct mailer or a cold call, or a cold email, and those typically get very horrible response rates, so we'll probably have to touch them, I'd say probably a dozen or 20 times to get any sort of decent response rate from that cohort of potential students. I mean, probably like twice a month, reach out until they start responding.
And Vanjie, we're not gonna say names or talk about specifics up here, but I don't know, it'd be interesting to see if this person that reached out to you, what their grades are, and use that as an example and see, registering the grades or what's actually all involved in that. So that could be a kind of a pilot, if you will, if you wanted to look at that, but, go ahead. I know you've been waiting.
No, I just wanted to add, if we're gonna take a survey, to possibly include the student body, just to consider them in that survey and see what their opinion is, our students.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Just as a clarification, currently for homecoming, we do not allow guests. So it's just Canal Winchester High Schools. I just clarify that because I believe this is year 2 or 3 for that.
3, I think.
Yeah, getting ahead.
3,
Yeah,
I think.
and that was because of issues we were having at homecoming. So that's just something that to clear, like, it's not as if we're not allowing students to be guests or whatnot. We just do not allow guests at homecoming. So
For
just to-
non-Canal Winchester students. And in the
yeah,
handbook,
we say
it
Canal
states
Winchester High
that.
School students only is how we have it worded. So just clarification on
And
that.
that's good to
currently.
know, because that's context that we as board members don't necessarily have when we're looking at this. So we knew it had to be in there for a reason. We just didn't know what the reason is, and that would be helpful to know.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's
Yeah.
input and willingness to listen.
We have something else we wanna,
I do have another thing.
all right?
I wanted to bring up our policy on expulsions, removal, and suspensions, which is our policy, I think it's PO 5610. In this policy, if a student is suspended, I believe it's if they're suspended or expelled, they are not allowed to participate in school dances or homecoming, I believe it is, for that school year. And that's even if it happened at the first week of school. If something happened during the first or second week of school or in the first 9 weeks of school, they aren't allowed to participate in any event for the rest of the school year. They're removed from the list of students who are eligible to participate. and this is even if they may not have been the student who caused the issue. I'm asking that we look at this policy and consider modifying it to look at maybe a sliding scale or something along that thing to give a student a second chance and something to look forward to of if I do certain things during the school year, I could still be allowed to go to prom. If I do certain things during the rest of the school year, I could still be allowed to go to homecoming. But just to take away all their privileges for the whole school year, I'm just asking that we reconsider it. This has been brought to my attention more than once. And honestly, in full disclosure, I had a student as a foster child who also it happened to, but I'm not concerned about that student because they probably wouldn't have gone anyway. I'm just looking at the policy itself as to whether or not it's something that we could reconsider and think about the student. We know people do make mistakes, kids make mistakes, and we're basically taking any type of opportunity for them to look forward to something away. And that was all of my thought there, and I wanted to see if we had any opportunity to rethink that.
Is that what I honestly, I
And maybe
I
you
don't
could
know
get a
what the
student
policy
survey.
Yeah, I would love to
states.
clarify. So if you recall, coming off of COVID, the amount of fights we were having, one after the other, it was out of control at the high school. And it wasn't just here at Canal Winchester, it was across the board. Every high school, not every, but the majority of high schools were seeing it. We were not out of the norm. And at that time, the principal put into place to say that if you fight, then you are not to attend homecoming or prom. And I believe this conversation was already had with Mr. Statanovich this year. And he and I talked about it afterwards, that he said, you know what, I am not opposed to revisiting that. I do have, I think that there are times where maybe it's something you can earn back if you lose it. But because it's in place, it's in our handbook, it's already there for this school year, that would be something he would revisit next year. So just so that we clarify that that was something that was discussed with him, and that was his conversation point back for that.
I mean, if Mr. C is willing to revisit that and look at that and give a student a second chance and earn it on merit and such, I think we as a board can support him and take a look at that moving forward. So it's not a clear cut. It might be a little bit more of a body of work for that student, if you will. Look at, middle school, what was that student in middle school? Did they carry that forward to high school, or is this an isolated incident? I mean, all that could be revisited. I don't have an issue looking
Yeah.
at that.
And so that's something that he wants to
I'd
look
like
at what
to have him in the
Taken away by
conversations.
the principal or the superintendent when it was taken
That
away?
decision was made at the building level because of what they were seeing. Now, I believe the superintendent supported it because it wouldn't have happened had it not. That was prior to me sitting in the seat.
I thought it was at 8th grade level too, like the 8th grade, if you get in trouble, you can't go in 8th grade.
It could
field trip.
potentially, the number of fights that they were seeing, it was a way to curb the amount of fights and to have people aware that and it's in the handbook, so it's known, if you fight, you will not have, so it was a way to curb the behaviors. And I would say it probably worked with some other things that we put into place where the fighting decreased. And so that is something where I think this year, Mr. Statanovich will use this year to look at it and see, and with him being a new principal, he'll spend time to then make recommendations to us for changes coming for the next school year,
And-
so.
And like for the middle school, for the 8th grade DC trip, I've got to remember I just did this last year, so I should know this. I want to say, like, different behaviors are given, like, different points, and then once you reach a certain number of points, and I forget what, it's either 12 or 15 points, then you lose the ability to go on the DC trip. But I don't think that there's one behavior that gives you all the points that then you lose the ability to take the trip. Like, I don't think one suspension removes the ability for the student to take the trip. I think it's got to be.
That must have changed because it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
It was a suspension could get you kicked.
No, I might,
even getting a,
I
even,
might
this
be
was
wrong, and
before
I'd have to,
COVID.
yeah, I might be
This has
wrong,
been
and I'd
for
have
a
to
while.
revisit.
Yeah,
I'd
and
have
there
to
may be
revisit
things
that from
because we're
last year.
taking students out of state. I mean, there are, when we go to DC, those are some pretty big, pretty big responsibilities for our
exposure.
staff. And so,
Well, I guess
I
I'm
did
just
see Mr.
saying-
Moore nodding though, so I think Mr. George, you're accurate, because I did see him nodding back there.
Yeah, I'd like to have
I'm just saying, I'd like
Steve
to
and Brian
revisit.
involved in those conversations, since it's gonna directly affect their building, so they have have a say in that, so.
I guess my question is, or maybe is, why would it have to happen next year? Is there a reason why we have to wait a whole school year for this to be looked at and put into place or changed?
Well, I mean, it is policy, so you all can change it. I would say that we need to be very careful with what we change when we're looking at student behaviors. Because, again, then what happens if we start to see fights all along? I'm not saying it would happen, but again, it's for the safety of our kids. It's not always just the kids fighting. There's fights that happen in a rotunda where there's 200 kids passing between classes, and it's really easy for somebody to get hurt. So it's, again, trying to curb those, stop those behaviors and use, as much as I love homecoming and I love prom, and I think my child loves to go to homecoming and loves to go to prom and get dressed up, it's not a necessity for a student at school. It's not a required event. Is it great to go to? Absolutely, but it's also a privilege to be able to go to a homecoming or a prom. And so I'm not saying that I'm against changing it. I just think changing it in September for the school year is something that I don't know that I would recommend for this school year. But again, not my decision.
I support the policy because I think you can safely presume that prior to a student being disciplined, there's going to be an investigation, correct? There's an opportunity for the parent in school and the student to appear for a hearing. Is that correct?
Correct.
So these decisions aren't being made in a hasteful kind of way, to my understanding. So I'm fine with it as long as there's a in-depth, more detailed type of investigation that happens, that we look at it very seriously before a student is disciplined as such. But I do support the zero tolerance policy for violence and fighting. I think we have to look at the bigger picture and that we're trying to keep all of our students safe. And we are sending the message that we're not going to tolerate the misconduct, disruptive behavior. So I'm a proponent of our policy the way it is, as long as we are taking it very seriously prior to disciplining the student and looking at all factors.
Yes, and I will confirm that the amount of time that our administrators spend on investigation of all of the things what cause a student to get suspended is many and many of hours per situation.
And I will say that our policy and what we do is, just for clarification, is if two students get into a fight, it doesn't matter which one started it or which one threw the first fight, threw the first punch. Both students are expelled for the same amount of time, is what I've been told. And that both students get the exact same punishment, is what I've been told. And the only time that they don't get the same punishment is if the one student does not fight back and they get into an argument or a fight. As long as if the student didn't fight back, they don't get the same punishment. That is specifically what I was told. So if it's different, and you do go to a hearing, the hearing doesn't necessarily change anything. And so if it's different than that, I'm just going by what I was told. So what I was just saying is, if a student is being bullied or has a fear of something or is experiencing issues at school and they are taken off of something for the rest of the school year, all I was saying is it should be some way of them earning it back, is all I was saying. And I would like to see us look at that, and I think I'm going to take what you've said as that we can look at that, and we will allow the principal to look at that for next year or this year or whenever they decide to do it.
And I will clarify, just so every fight's different. A lot of the times, both students will get the same. There are other times where both students will not get the same. I've seen it where there's a 10-day suspension coming from one, there's a 3 from another. I've seen both 10. I've actually seen most recently where, just as Ms. Barnes just explained, where another student started swinging, the kid threw a punch or two because he was stuck and could not get out, and then held the student while another student went and came back in, and that student did not receive any discipline because there was no way out, there was a protection. We talk a lot, just in fighting in general. At school, we can't allow it because of it. We have high expectations for our students, and that's not to say that a parent might be okay with a student protecting themselves and fighting back. If you have an opportunity to walk away, we expect that you walk away. And that is the expectation for us to keep a building safe.
But from what it sounds like, there are scenarios where if a student is in a position where they have to defend themselves, there's a possibility, not always, that they may not receive the same level of discipline that other students may.
Correct.
Okay. But it's definitely a situation by situation basis, so it's not
It
like
is.
a blanketed. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I'm not opposed to the disciplined student earning their rights back. I do believe in restoration and, you know, like Vanjie said, you know, people make mistakes. So I feel like that could be included in the policy as opposed to amending it to make it a little less severe. I think we could add some pieces to it, you know.
Okay.
May I ask a question? Kai, this is more for you. We keep saying policy, but I think our board policy is fine. Am I wrong with that? It comes down to code of conduct within the student handbook, which both of these issues that Ms. Barnes brought up are code of conduct issues at the building level. The building level is choosing not to allow guests to the homecoming, not board policy restricting
It's the policy.
access to homecoming.
So a little bit about, you are 100% on the fighting, that it's a code of conduct. There is language within policy. It does not address specifics around 10 days, around what happens with you losing your dance privileges, whatnot. That's all within the student handbook. I think we could go both ways on the language of the homeschooled student. We specifically state in the high school handbook that it's Canal Winchester High School students only. That's where you hit the no guest. That's where so that one does address it. And then we look at the other piece with policy versus events versus extracurriculars. There are two different policies, but they don't specifically state, you know, the specifics of it in homecoming. Correct. Yeah. So, yes. So both of those specifics are detailed in the student handbooks at the high school. And again, that's not something I will say, the fighting was a recommendation from the principal at the time. The specific, I will not say that the decision about the homeschooled student attending an event at the high school is on the high school. That would be a decision that we made. Yep, thanks for that clarification.
All right, and I had one more that I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
I would like to get documentation that defines for pay to participate fees, how that is, what the policy is that covers a student who has financial hardship. What is the process documented for them to get help if they want those fees covered? I've been told multiple times that that can be done, but how is it done and where is it documented?
The only thing that we have documented in the student handbook talks about if you'd like to fundraise for, anybody can fundraise. And the athletic office has different opportunities for that. That's what we currently have in the handbook for addressing anybody, whether they are free and reduced or not, can fundraise to not have fees.
Okay. Well, I was specifically told, again, and I ask again today, and our athletic director is not here today, but he did say that he was going to ask the same question. But my question was, where is it specifically documented? Because he was told the same thing, that if a person comes to us and says they can't afford to pay, but their kid wants to play, that we have the ability to do this, to help them with it, and it's not, you gotta go sell something. So I've been told that too, and I've been told that we've helped other kids be able to play, but I wanna know what the policy is and where it's written so that it could be made public to everyone that there is a policy, because I keep being told there is one, but I haven't found it, so.
I was told that too, if you recall, like when we talked in the fall, and the only thing I heard of is this piece here where it's specific to fundraising, and it's not just, it's for everybody, there's not one. I did not, like at first I had heard through the grapevine that, oh, well, if you have issues, you can go to the athletic office and they'll.
That's what I've been told for years around here.
But there is, from my understanding, when we researched it and looked into that, there was nothing like that. But that's
Right.
my knowledge of it.
Yeah, my knowledge is no one's excluded from paying pay-to-participate fees.
My personal experience is when I was unemployed and had no money to pay a pay-to-participate fee, I was told I had to pay the pay-to-participate fee. So that's my personal experience.
Yeah, mine too.
So,
And I'm
yeah.
just still trying to find out where this, and that I've been told, well, other kids have been, we've done this, and but we can't tell you who it is, so I don't want them to. I just want to know
I
where
think
this
coaches,
policy is.
I think coaches
So
pay it
there's
out of their
no
pocket.
policy.
I think
Yes.
coaches' friends pay it out of their pocket.
As a
I think
teacher,
it
I
is
know
100% a
I'm not gonna tell
donation.
everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and pay it. I'm not, I mean, especially if it's a good kid. I mean, that's not something I'm putting out there, but that's not the reason why I'm
But
doing
the athletic department is not doing this. There is no program, there is no,
Correct.
and that's what I've been asking for years here. And I've been told, yeah, sure, there's a way that all you have to do is come to me and let me know. But that is why I want us to look at pay to participate fees for students who have free and reduced lunch, and how we can assist or find out if there's students who aren't participating because they don't have the resources to do so, and they're being left out of the ability to, they have good grades, come to school, but they can't participate because they don't have the resources to play, and that's what I want us to look at.
Every time I've heard a student that ran into that situation has gone and spoken to a coach, those coaches pull out of the money out of their own pocket. They want that kid to play for them, and it's been taken care of. It's not announced, it's not promoted. It's something that, the coach or the coach's friend is not looking for any accolades. It's like, let's just get the kid playing. It's not documented. It's, to help protect the student from whatever they might be going through. But no, I don't believe there's a policy, but the goodness of the community, it gets taken care of when it's talked about, so.
And so I'm going back to what I want to do is.
What do you want to do?
look
You
at
want,
the policy to see how we can redo the policy for pay to participate fees, to look at people not having to come to tell us that they're having an issue or tell somebody that they need help. If they want to go to their family member, great, or somebody like that, great. But that they shouldn't have to do that. If they have a financial need to be able to do that, they can be able to do that without coming to somebody, that there's a policy in place that allows them to be able to get a break on the pay-to-play fees. That's what I'm saying. So I don't know how we do that, and I know other school districts do it. They do it on free and reduced lunches. They do it sliding scale. They do it on the number of kids that are playing. We only get a break after you're on your third sport, but never on the number of kids that you might have playing sports. You might have 3 kids playing sports, and they all may be playing 2, and you're paying full price for all 3.
yep. Yep. And those fees have been reduced and reduced and reduced over the last 10, 12, 15 years to make it more affordable for this situation.
Okay. Well, that's my ask. When we look at the policy. And I don't don't know what we need to do that. Maybe I need to work with the athletic director and the budget.
And it's not board policy. It comes down to the athletic handbook, and it comes down to the board approval of the pay participation fees, which both happened 2 months ago, July, I think.
So this isn't policy,
That's board policy, but that board policy is very vague to only indicate that pay to participate fees may be collected. It has no details on the play 2 sports, get the third for free. That's all detailed out in the athletic handbook that was approved 5-0 by the board in, I think, July. So it would become a next year discussion of whether there's exemptions, whether there's family exemptions of if you have 2 people playing, the third child's free or something along those lines. And then looking at the pay to participate fee approval at that point next year also.
I think if you sit down with Jacob and have those conversations, would be the first step.
And maybe he's seen stuff in other districts since he's coming from, where'd he come from, Worthington?
New Albany,
New
or Upper
Albany?
Arlington. and
But he's
then-
been in several, right?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
He's been around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
would say you've
I
gotta-
plan on having the conversations. I just wanted to
Yeah.
bring it,
Oh, okay.
bring it on to the board as something that I wanted to, either get now that we've got a complete admission that there is no policy, then, I wanted to actually get something, see if we can document something for it. And then present it to, the board.
Yeah.
Good conversations.
Thank you.
You got any others going on?
No, that's it. Thank
Come
you.
on. That's it?
Well, let me think.
No, you're done. Okay, I am going, unless there's any other conversation, we are going to be entering into executive session. There will be no voting, no need to come back here, so you folks don't need to stick around, but we will be entering an executive session. I motion to go in an executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official to discuss matters of federal law and regulations of state statutes require to the public body to keep confidential.
I second it.
And Mr.
Roberts? Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0. Appreciate everyone's attendance this evening.
Thank you.
Enter at 9:30.
Sure. Are we going to be? We'll stay here?